Freshman quarterback Steve Angeli's diving touchdown as time expired saved what was otherwise an uneventful offensive day. Became a gold win, 13-10 over Blue. I'd have to say that the defenses for both sides obviously dominated this game, but it was good to see some of the young players provide offensive highlights and just some momentum in the offseason for themselves.
I think we didn't stress it a whole lot, but I think that we expected defense to dominate by and large, partly because, as always in a blue gold game, the offensive lines are mixing and matching, and they're not playing together, and Tyler Buckner not being available. We didn't anticipate the really, really tough day that Drew Pine had, and his numbers, I mean, for one team was actually pretty good, 9 for 10 for a small amount of yards, but he was intercepted twice. It could have been a third time. And I thought at the time, and Marcus Freeman said after the game, that he needs help from his receivers to make some of those plays. And I think in some instances that had something to do with it, but obviously not the way that Drew Pine wanted to finish the spring.
No, and if you're Drew Pine and you don't attack downfield very often, that's not your game. You really don't want to see a guy throwing some questionable passes, 3 that are intercepted, 1 gets called back, a couple others that could have been. I mean, there are enough groans when we're watching it where it's like, ooh, that's not a good pass. And that's not what you want out of Pine. You want Pine to be coolly efficient, 25 of 33, but maybe he doesn't throw for enough yards because he doesn't throw down the field. I think he just wasn't.
He forced some of the screen passes. There's no doubt about that.
It seemed like Drew Pine at his best last year. It seemed like Drew Pine when we watched him struggle in August camp with bigger bodies all around him.
Now, the one thing that we did anticipate was a lot of screen passes because we knew going into this that they were not going to throw the ball downfield a whole lot. They want to show Ohio State as little as possible. I think that they definitely accomplished that offensively. There's no doubt about that. But, there was a few guys that stood out. Jadarian Price, we said in the pregame that he could have a big game. It was tough sledding there for a while. But when you give him a little bit of room, he takes advantage of it. We interviewed him afterwards, the same cool Jadarian Price that we interviewed a few weeks ago. And Steve Angeli, I mean, credit to him, 10 play, 83-yard drive, benefited by a targeting call. We all joked that it was Ryan Barnes, right? We were on the field by then. Ryan Barnes will have to sit out the first half of next year's blue gold game. But anyway, it was a struggle offensively for a large part of it, but Angeli came through in the clutch. I mean, we're going to go over some of the playmakers that we felt during the game in our post-game writing, but some other guys, Tim, that you want to accentuate from today.
Well, I think from start to almost finish, Riley Mills had a good day, and that's what we were hoping for after we talked to Al Washington and Marcus Freeman, that Riley Mills will take the third-year leap that we thought he might take in the second year, and maybe that he played inside, he played outside, and he's a big dude out there. I mean, he was a big guy moving around. It's just, I think the front seven is way better than half of Notre Dame's offensive line. I think the front seven is better than Notre Dame's offensive line in total, too. I think Notre Dame's offensive line will continue to improve, especially as the season progresses and as the summer progresses. But you're never going to have a Notre Dame offensive line beat what the collection they have of front 7 players when you cut them in half with backup quarterbacks. It's just, that just doesn't make any, that's not going to happen.
I thought Jaden Thomas flashed a little bit. He had a 22-yard run. He averaged less than 10 yards per catch. Again, they weren't going, it wasn't going to be a big downfield day for them. Deion Colsey had a chance to make a play at the goal line. It's a tough play, but he has to make that. And then he had the reception in the end zone at the end of the game. He had a twist and turn. He was out of bounds. Those are plays that Deion Colsey needs to make in order for them to have confidence in him.
Yeah, and we can signal out a player because they only have 5 of them. I mean, it's super important that Deion Colsey comes along. Let's say Jaden Thomas has a much better redshirt freshman year than any of us would have ever guessed. You still need Deion Colsey to play a supporting role or to push Jaden Thomas or surpass Jaden Thomas. It's something we talked about off the air on our podcast. Is it a good thing all around that Thomas is ahead of Colsey, or is it possibly a bad thing? I think it's a good thing for Jaden Thomas.
It's a good thing for Jaden Thomas, and that's really the only thing that you can measure. If the other guy isn't going to step forward, then you have somebody that is at least inching his way. I don't think that Jaden Thomas is a guy that can create a ton of separation at this point in his career. But, something that Chancey Stuckey said during the spring was he's physical, but he has to realize that he has a lot of athleticism too, and he needs to rely on that and just not be physical all the time. I'm going to say that Maris Leofau, that's not the only interception we're going to see from him in 2022. I think when the season rolls around in the fall, I think he's going to be a big time playmaker.
I've thought this on 3 occasions last 2 weeks. It's totally irrelevant, but I think they could have been 12-0 with Maris Leofau last year because of how he impacts the defense. Now they still would have been 12-1 because you run into that situation that always exists in the playoffs with Alabama or Georgia, but he makes a difference on that defense. His range, his physicality. He's a versatile guy. What a steal in recruiting. I mean, I wish everybody that was ranked at the 400s would come around and play like that, like Maris Leofau. But he's something to watch out there. And I think it's a positive that Jordan Botelho made that play. I'm not saying that we were ever on transfer watch or anything like that with Jordan Botelho, but he doesn't have a position to start, right? So they need to find a role. He looked like he had some roles today. And Coach Freeman said Viper and Rover he's been playing. And I think that's because they don't know exactly where to put him. The lights go on, something happens. He comes to play, he comes to hit. He just needs obviously to increase his aptitude everywhere in the game.
Yeah. In addition to his interception, he had a backside sack.
Yeah.
You know, I know I was when Jaden Mickey almost came up with the interception. You wanted him.
You rooted for it?
I did. I did. Well,
I
I'm
did
known
too.
for rooting out loud in the press box, but I definitely was rooting for that because you want the public to see what we've been indicating, you know, all along. I thought Gabe Rubio showed some really good things on the interior. I think he has some versatility. He has great size, playing nose tackle, but he also has some mobility and some lateral movement. So I thought he showed some good things.
And Steve Angeli saved the feeling of the day, right? Because 10-7, game ends, another offensive failure in the red zone. I don't think you'd feel the same. I don't think the Notre Dame players and staff would feel the same in that press conference if they didn't have kind of that highlight to end it. Everybody's spirits were up. Coach Washington, Coach McCullough. And I do like how Marcus Freeman made this, since nobody really got hurt. I do like how Marcus Freeman made this a competitive atmosphere and having two guys giving the head coaching experience. It was kind of a cool idea.
I know we're missing guys that we want to accentuate, and we're going to go over and write about them right now. So whoever we missed, there'll be a few more plaudits to throw out for the individuals that stood out in this game. That's it from Notre Dame Stadium. The Gold team pulls out the victory 13-10.